President, we have a national emergency.
This is one of the things that we can shoot first and ask questions later. Normally you can't do that.
All of a sudden these trees started moving out of the way. They parted for me. And then I came out into this opening, and there where I saw Jesus Christ.
Back in 1927, an American socialist, Norman Thomas, 6 times candidate for president on the Socialist Party ticket, said the American people would never vote for socialism. But he said under the name of liberalism, the American people will adopt every fragment of the socialist program. He is more imminent. James Madison, in 1788, speaking to the Virginia Convention, said, "Since the general civilization of mankind, I believe there are more instances of the abridgment of the freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachment of those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations." When men were free.
Broadcasting live from a secret location buried deep below the earth, you're about to make a connection to the signs of the times. W. Dean Shook is live on the air right now.
And welcome into End Time News. I am once again your very humbled host, W. Dean Shook. Thank you for being here. I appreciate everybody. I appreciate you showing up. Now, as I'm sure everybody has heard, that a federal judge has put the plug in Obama's amnesty program, and he's done a very efficient job at it, even though Eric Holder came out and made a statement that he knew it was going to go to a higher court, which kind of tells me that Obama and Holder both knew up front that it wasn't legal, that it was going to end up in the court system. So for those of you that haven't heard, I'm going to tell you the story about it. And for those of you that have, I'm going to give you some details. Before we do that, I want to announce that End Time News now has a mobile app available on Google Play. Just go to Google Play and search End Time News, and you'll see the mobile app with our logo come up. Never miss an episode of End Time News again. Stay connected to the signs of the times. The End Time News mobile app available on Google Play. You know what the best part about it is? It's free. That's my favorite part. It's free. All right. Now, I got all of these details from WND about the federal judge that halted Obama's amnesty orders. Now, this was a federal judge in Texas on Monday who granted a temporary injunction halting President Obama's amnesty program. The ruling from U.S. District Judge Andrew Hannon ordered the government not to proceed with any portion of the deferred action for parents of Americans and lawful permanent residents. In his order, the federal judge said the court found that at least one plaintiff has satisfied all the necessary elements to maintain a lawsuit or to obtain a temporary injunction. He said this: "The United States of America, its departments, agencies, officers, agents, and employees of Jeb Johnson, Secretary, Department of Homeland Security, United States Custom Border Protection, United States Border Patrol, United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the United States Citizen and Immigration Services are hereby enjoined from implementing any and all aspects or phases of the deferred action for parents of Americans and lawful permanent residents." The outline of plans was set out in the Secretary of Homeland Security Jeb Johnson's memorandum dated November 20th. This was not an executive order. He said the injunction is till a final resolution of the merits of this case or until a further order of this court, the United States Courts of Appeal to the Fifth Circuit or the United States Supreme Court, the judge ordered. He cited the Obama administration's failure to comply with the Administrative Procedure Act. He also ordered that federal officials and agencies are further enjoined from implementing any and all aspects or phases of the expansion, including any and all changes to the deferred action for childhood arrivals. The judge also explained the defendants will be allowed to reapproach the court for relief from this order in the time period between the date of this order and the trial on the merits, for good cause, including if Congress passes legislation that authorizes DAPA or as such time as the defendants have complied with the requirements of the Administrative Procedure Act. Well, in August, Texas Governor Greg Abbott said President Obama indicated his responsibility to hold up the United States Constitution when he attempted to circumvent the laws passed by Congress via executive fiat, and Judge Hannon's decision rightly stops the president's overreach in its tracks. He went on to say we live in a nation governed by a system of checks and balances. The president's attempt to bypass the will of the American people was successfully checked today. The district court's ruling is very clear. It prevents the president from implementing the policies in any and all aspects. The fight will determine whether the United States can be ran by a president and his decrees or by a chief elected official who enforces the laws Congress writes, according to Mark Kikorian, chief of the Center of Immigration Studies, which watches the immigration situation. He said the coming dispute, which very well may extend into the 2016 presidential election or beyond, is going to decide the balance of powers, whether Congress actually makes law or is an advisory body like the UN General Assembly, which is how Obama sees it. MSNBC did a report only days ago speculating on whether Hannon would halt the federal plan. MSNBC called Hannon a critic of the Obama administration immigration policies. Worried MSNBC, if Hannon decides against the Obama administration, it could block the implementation of the executive measures, which are scheduled to kick off February 18th. If that were to happen, the Department of Justice would almost certainly appeal the decision, which would then go to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, yet another conservative-leaning court. The fact that more than half of the United States are participating in the case has alarmed amnesty protesters. They still hope more and more illegals come out of the shadows and claim a place in the head of the line of those waiting for official recognition in the U.S., or at least it appears that way. An accompanying document, a 123-page memorandum, Hannon wrote about the state's interest in not allowing their own resources to be drained by the constant influx of illegal immigrants. He found states ultimately bear the brunt of illegal immigration. The opinion noted specifically that Washington maintains that none of the plaintiffs have standing to bring this injunction action. The states disagree, claiming that the government cannot implement a program and then insulate itself from legal challenges by those who suffer from its negative effects. The judge said Obama's program isn't only a situation where there aren't enough resources, so program managers pick and choose which cases to handle. Washington's current program is an announced program of non-enforcement of the law that contradicts Congress' statutory goals. The DHS does have discretion in the matter, in which it chooses to fulfill the express will of Congress. It cannot, however, enact a program whereby it only ignores the dictates of Congress, but actively acts to thwart them. Well, and of course there was an immediate response from a Democrat from Illinois, Luis Gutierrez, who says we will not be deterred. Here's what he said. He said, we may be delayed, but we will not be deterred. Gutierrez said in a Tuesday statement, in our neighborhoods, this is about defending families and making sure that children who are U.S. citizens grow up with their parents. It's that simple. And there's a great deal of passion and determination to fight to defend families. I'm telling immigration communities to keep preparing to sign up for millions of families for protection from deportation. Gutierrez claimed there's no good legal case to be made by the president's opponents, and legislation the hardliners are putting forward in Washington is going nowhere. He said that politically and practically the idea of deporting or driving out 11 million people and their families is absurd, and predicted that the effort to defend Obama's executive amnesty is going to backfire. We may be delayed, but we will not be deterred, Gutierrez said in a statement. It's about defending families and is urging everyone to continue to sign up for this deferred action. Well, unfortunately for him, the Obama administration won't accept amnesty applications, said we must comply with the injunction. On Tuesday, the Department of Homeland Security announced that it will not accept new applications for President Barack Obama's executive amnesty until the lawsuit against it is resolved. The day after a federal judge issued the injunction against Obama's executive action, Homeland Security Secretary Jeb Johnson said that we strongly disagree with the ruling. The Obama administration will comply with it. Illegal immigrants would have to be eligible to apply for the expanded Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. On Wednesday, while Obama temporary's amnesty program for the parents of U.S. citizens was set to go into effect later this year. In the meantime, we recognize we must comply with it, Johnson said in a statement. According to the Department of Homeland Security, we will not begin accepting requests for the expansion of DACA tomorrow, February 18th, as originally planned until further notice. We also suspend the plan to accept requests for DAPA. Well, I think that sounds pretty clear. This is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Personally, I'm glad to see somebody do something about it. I think anyone with any common sense knew it was illegal from the beginning. And here's another story from WND about our dictator-in-chief who unleashes a newest attack on guns. Now, I want you to pay attention to this one. If you're like me and you have a rifle that fires .223 or .556 NATO, then you're going to want to pay attention to this. By executive fiat, the Obama administration intends to eliminate one of the most common types of .223 caliber ammunition used by the AR-15 and other general-purpose rifles. Why? Ostensibly because there's a new type of handgun that's also capable of shooting the so-called armor-piercing or green-tipped rounds traditionally fired by its rifles, therefore exempt from the ban. But the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms and Explosives announced on February 14th a proposed ban on the manufacture, sale, and importation of a popular form of ammunition used by thousands of law-abiding gun owners, and within hours of the announcement, the prices of the green-tip .223 rounds started skyrocketing. The rule change affects the Gun Control Act of 1968. As amended by Congress in 1986, under pressure from the law enforcement lobby, Congress in 1986 inserted language into the law designed to prevent so-called cop-killer bullets from being used by pistol-toting criminals. The law was never intended in its original form to affect ammunition for rifles, as it was given the rounds from a high-powered hunting rifle could penetrate the soft armor worn by police officers. This is just another example of the Obama administration using executive authority to attack the rights of gun owners, said Alan Gottlieb, founder and executive vice president of the Second Amendment Foundation. He went on to say Obama thinks he's dictator-in-chief and can go around Congress to ban ammunition and punish legitimate gun owners. The Obama administration has doubled down on their war on guns. Jerry Henry, executive director of the GeorgiaCarry.org, was equally outraged by the announcement. This move is nothing less than the administration taking the law into their own hands, bypassing Congress and their constitutional duties of writing and passing legislation. As was the case with amnesty for illegal immigrants, Obama uses executive action to adopt a controversial agenda that lacks support in Congress or among the American people. The administration has failed to pass gun control legislation through the constitutional process. They failed at the polls to pass meaningful gun control. They failed to win in the courts, he said. The only way left is through legal processes and backdoor regulations. The American people have spoken to the gun control antics of this administration, but the administration refuses to listen. Henry then said, the man-servant relationship between Americans and the people who govern this is slowly being reversed. If this is not stopped, and stopped now, the administration will continue to push their agenda to disarm the American citizens with the goal of making them slaves to the U.S. government, he said. Citizens have the right to be armed. Slaves to the U.S. government will have no such right. And there's something to ponder right there, isn't it? Well, and I've got a story out of Colorado, speaking of government working independently, opposite of what the people say. The state is being called out for giving abortionists unauthorized millions. Colorado officials funded abortionists, even though voters approved a state constitutional amendment banning the practice. This is being argued in a brief filed in an appeal of trials court decision to uphold the state's alleged misuse of $14 million in taxpayer funds. Colorado bureaucrats should not use taxpayer dollars to pay for abortions, especially when the Colorado Constitution prohibits it. This according to Natalie Decker of the Alliance Defending Freedom. The lower court should not have dismissed the case on a technicality since it agreed that $14 million of taxpayer funds flowed from the state government agencies to Planned Parenthood and its abortion affiliate, presumptively in violation of the state constitution. The case has its foundation in 1984 when Colorado voters approved a complete ban in their constitution on direct and indirect state funding of abortion. The State Department of Health, at the time ran by Jane Norton, audited Planned Parenthood and found that state monies were subsidizing its operations, so funding was ended. However, despite the amendment, Governor Bill Ritter, a Democrat, resumed the practice of giving tax money to the abortion business after he arrived in office in 2007. The current governor, Democrat John Hickenlooper, has continued the practice. The case was moved up to the State Court of Appeals when the District Judge Andrew P. McCullen threw it out without allowing the pretrial discovery phase sought by the plaintiff. The ADF says the voters' primary concern is enacting Colorado's abortion funding limitation was to establish a public policy for the state of Colorado that public funds are not to be spent for the destruction of prenatal life through abortion procedures. ADF senior counsel Michael Norton, previously signed in, said no one is above the law, including Colorado politicians who are violating our state constitution by continuing to fund Planned Parenthood abortion activities with taxpayer dollars, he said. Apparently, it's not just the federal government who do as they please. There are some states that are also just do what they please. And if you don't like it, too bad. Sit down and shut up. I'm going to take a short break here. When I come back, we're going to talk about the largest bank heist in history. We're also going to talk about spy agencies are funding climate change for a possible weather weapon. And the Chinese electromagnetic weapon may paralyze U.S. air defense, or will it? We'll look at a little political scam behind that. And Mexican soldiers kill 3 cartel members in a fierce firefight near the Texas border. We'll be right back after this short break. You're listening to End Time News.
Do you think the media is biased? Maybe they're leaving something out, or there's something they're not telling you. Now, you have a source for the truth in the news. W. Dean Shook, End Time News. Your connection to the signs of the times.
Hi, folks. Have you noticed the federal government and police departments are using drones for everything? Drones are expensive. They're hard to fly. It can take up to a week just to learn to make a drone hover. Not anymore. There's a new generation of drones that are not only affordable, but very easy to fly. Now, you can have your own personal drone, anything from a micro mini that'll fit in the palm of your hand, right up to a full-scale model, 10 inches in diameter like the model I have, the V949 Pro. Comes with a 6-axis 4-rotor blade and an HD 2.4 camera mounted on the bottom. These drones are made of a space-age polymer. They're durable. And don't worry about crashing your drone. Replacement blades for this drone from the website are only $1.80 for a pack of 4. That's right, I said $1.80 for a pack of 4 replacement blades. You can also get an extra long life battery. This battery allows you up to a half-hour of flight time with a maximum speed of 40 miles an hour. Have your own personal drone, and you can get all of this for under $70. If you go to the website, wdeanshook.com, and click on the banner on the webpage, you can get from 7 to 22% off your personal drone. It's shipped as a kit. You can be up and flying your own personal drone with an HD camera within a half hour. Come to the webpage, wdeanshook.com. Click on that banner and get your discount today. wdeanshook.com.
GoDaddy offers everything you need to make a name for yourself on the web, from domain names and website builders to complete e-commerce solutions. We've earned our place as the world's #1 accredited domain registrar by delivering world-class products at competitive prices and support them with industry best services delivered 24/7, 365. We're proud to serve our customers from locations around the world. Sign up now at wdeanshook.com and get your domain name as low as $5.99 a year. Sign up now at wdeanshook.com. Go, Daddy. Go, Daddy.
It's what's being called the biggest bank heist in history. Hackers have stolen $300 million and possibly as much as $1 billion from banks around the world since 2013. The majority of the targets were in Russia, but many were in Japan, the U.S., and Europe. More than 100 banks and other financial institutions in 30 nations have been affected, making it one of the largest bank thefts ever, and one conducted without the usual signs of robbery. Kaspersky Lab, Interpol, Europol, and authorities from different countries joined forces to uncover the plot, which is being called an unprecedented cyber robbery. The cyber criminals came from Russia, Ukraine, China, and Europe. Kaspersky researchers described a Hollywood-style scheme where hackers used an arsenal of attack tools and techniques to siphon massive amounts of money directly from the banks rather than targeting the end user or the bank customer. Through its investigation to date, the security company said it had evidence of roughly $300 million being stolen by the cybercriminals, but believes the total could be upward of $1 billion. The attacks, which are still active, focus mainly on banks in Russia, but may have had success in Japan, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and the United States. They all use roughly the same modus operandi. The bank's internal computers, used by employees who conduct bookkeeping and processes daily transfers, was penetrated by malware that allows cybercriminals to record their every move. The malicious software lurked for months, sending video feeds and images that told a criminal group how the bank conducted their daily routines. In most cases reported security weak, networks were compromised between 2 to 4 months before the attackers made off with the stolen funds, adding that during that period of time, attackers were able to get access to the right victims and critical systems and learn how to operate their tools and systems to execute their cyber heist. This has got to be leading somewhere. Well, and I also have to tell you about this story from The Guardian. This says that spy agencies are funding climate change research in a hunt for a weather weapon. A senior U.S. scientist has expressed concern that the intelligence services are funding climate change research to learn if new technologies could be used as potential weapons. Alan Roebuck, a climate scientist at Rutgers University in New Jersey, has called on secretive government agencies to be open about their interest in critical work that explores how to alter the world's climate. Roebuck, who has contributed to reports for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, used computer models to study how stratospheric aerosols could cool the planet in a way that a massive volcano eruption does. But he was worried who would control such climate-altering technologies should they prove effective. He told the American Association for the Advancement of Science that last week the National Academy of Science published a 2-page volume report on different approaches to tackling climate change. One focused on means to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, the other on ways to change clouds or the Earth's surface to make them reflect more sunlight out into space. The report concluded that while small-scale research projects were needed, the technologies were so far from being ready that reducing carbon emissions remained the most valuable approach to curbing the worst extremes of climate change. A report by the Royal Society in 2009 made similar recommendations. The $600,000 report was part funded by the U.S. Intelligence Service, but Roebuck said the CIA and other agencies had not fully explained their interest in the work. The CIA was a major funder of the National Academy's report, so that makes me really worried who's going to be in control of this, he said. Other funders include NASA, the U.S. Department of Energy, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Well, and here comes a story from Want China Times. Now, I seen through this story pretty easily. Let's see if you can see through this. A new Chinese electromagnetic weapon may paralyze U.S. air defenses. According to a Chinese expert, Cashin wants the U.S. to turn its attention toward the Asian Pacific and away from the crisis in Ukraine. The development of an X-ray pulse generator by the Zhejiang Institute of Optics and Precision Mechanics under the Chinese Academy of Sciences, Analysis of Strategy and Technologies, according to the Moscow-based Sputnik News. Cashin believes the Chinese electromagnetic weapon system based on the X-ray pulse generator has the potential to create a huge challenge to the United States in the Asia-Pacific region. He said it could be used to paralyze the air defense and anti-ballistic missile systems of the United States and its security partners, including Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea. After that, the People's Liberation Army could easily wreak havoc on the opposing forces' military facilities and hardware with its own aircraft and ballistic missiles. He went on to say with the electromagnetic weapon system, the U.S. can no longer rely on smaller, quick-reaction forces to confront Chinese expansion, according to Cashin. He said that Washington must deploy more troops and invest more money to strengthen the defense capability of American military bases in the Western Pacific. Yet, Cashin said the U.S. will not be able to defend its interest in Asia if it devotes too much attention to the Ukraine crisis. Oh, really? Chinese nationalist tabloid The Global Times said that Cashin wrote the article with political motives in mind. One Chinese expert told the Globe Times Russia is exaggerating the threat of the Chinese electromagnetic weapon system in order to try to divert the attention of American forces away from Europe and more specifically Ukraine and focus more on the Asia-Pacific region. He went on to say that Cashin has no knowledge regarding the development of the Chinese X-ray pulse generator at all. I don't think that was even a very good ploy. And according to Breitbart News, Mexican soldiers killed 3 cartel members in a fierce firefight near the Texas border. The Mexican military killed 3 gunmen as they fought off a fierce attack just south of the Texas border, despite Mexican officials claiming the security conditions in their country continue to improve. The early morning shootout took place earlier this week near the border city of Rio Bravo, along the highway that connects the city with Reynosa. This, according to information released by the government. The early morning shootout took place earlier this week near the border city. It started when a patrol of Mexican soldiers were carrying out a routine patrol and spotted a cartel convoy. When the soldiers tried to intercept them, the gunmen began to shoot at the soldiers, starting a fierce firefight. The soldiers were able to kill 3 gunmen who had been riding in a Nissan Armada. The others managed to flee. After the firefight, the soldiers seized multiple weapons and loaded ammunition magazines. And staying on the subject of immigration, seems the Daily Caller, of all people, is reporting that illegal immigrants who did not pay taxes will be able to claim back refunds once they're issued Social Security numbers. Out of Washington, Illinois Congressman Luis Gutierrez told the Daily Caller Friday he didn't know that illegal immigrants are eligible for tax refunds, even if they haven't paid taxes. Under the new program, Cashin told members of the House Oversight Committee Wednesday, if you get a Social Security number and you work, you'll be eligible to apply for the Earned Income Tax Credit. You'll get an amount depending on your situation, Korskin added. If you're an individual working and apply for the Earned Income Credit, the maximum you can get in this range of $500 to $600. However, according to the IRS's own website, a filer can receive a check of up to $6,143 when they have 3 or more qualifying children. When asked whether the tax credit program was only eligible to illegal immigrants who have previously filed taxes, Korskin conceded that those who have filed before could still be eligible for back credits. Turns out there was a lack of clarity about that, Caution said. If you get a Social Security number, you can then file for this year if you're working, and if you've earned income in the last 3 years, you were working before that and filed, you'll be eligible. If you did not file, you have to file a return, and you'll have to file to demonstrate with the same information everybody else would that you actually earned income and were therefore eligible. That's on the assumption that you would get the earned income tax credit automatically or not. Well, and there seems to be a little bit of controversy in the UK, according to Breitbart UK. They say, we report today that gay rights icon Peter Tatchell and other prominent figures on the British left are currently the subject of a bizarre and vicious witch hunt by the transsexual right campaigners and their allies. I'd like to tweet about your murder, you effing parasite, wrote one of the anonymous tweeters to Tatchell over the weekend. It's worth taking a moment to consider how this extraordinary state of affairs came about. The row started when 150 of Britain's great and good left-wing comrades signed a letter in defiance of free speech at university campuses in response to a number of proposed boycotts of those with opinions that notoriously intolerant and thin-skinned transgender lobbies don't like. Trans campaigners have leaped on the letter as evidence of transphobia on the part of the country's leading feminist gays and lefties. Yes, it is just as absurd as it sounds. Classical liberals insist a public good is only served by full and frank discussion, and that unfettered debate, free from worries about who might be offended, is the cornerstone of our way of life and central to our democratic values. Obviously, they're right. But the minority who reject, that do not support narratives of oppression, victimhood, and hurt feelings is very vocal, and in some cases quite powerful. They can also be exceedingly vicious. Millennials are the least bigoted, least racist, least homophobic, and least prejudiced generation in the history of the species. But the flip side of this apparent generational tolerance is the unwillingness of some to examine assumptions of a refusal to listen to others, even if they broadly share the same progressive views. They went on to say the truth is the jury is still very much out on transsexualism. The science is not settled on what kind of disorder it is or what treatments might be best administered. They said, we know, for instance, that transition surgery does little to curb suicide rates. Transgender patients often present other psychiatric problems, such as bipolar disorder, and the transsexuals are disproportionately poor compared to straights, gays, and lesbians. Beyond that, science is hampered by the framing of the transgender problem as a civil rights issue, so as to justify state spending on horrific and irreversible surgical procedures, rather than a mental health issue. In any case, so long as debate in public square is conducted on the basis of feelings instead of facts, we may never know how best to approach this disorder. Howls of outrage from Twitter mob intent of polishing such debates, even the point of throwing fellow travailer feminist and gay rights activists out to the wolves. Do nothing to help transsexuals and risk permanent damage to the integrity of free speech, not just on university campuses, but also in wider society. You'll find these stories on the website. And I've been reporting on all of these strange strains of all kinds of viruses coming up all over the place. You know, it's really made me wonder. Are these things being generated? Are they being mutated on purpose? Are they being released? Are they escaping? What are causing all of these pestilence? Well, according to Time magazine, a recently discovered form of HIV in Cuba has been found to progress into AIDS some 3 times faster than the most common strains of the virus, according to a recent study. The study, conducted by researchers from the University of Leuven in Belgium, followed several reports of HIV-infected people in Cuba developing AIDS in less than 3 years, far faster than the usual 10 years it typically takes. All patients infected with CRF-19, a recently discovered strain of the HIV virus, have higher levels of it in their body. They were also more likely to have developed AIDS within 3 years. The study published in the Journal of E-Biomedicine found the researchers, who looked at 95 patients at various stages of the infection, concluded that the strain must be particularly fit. Approximately 35 million people worldwide are living with HIV or AIDS. Nearly 40 million have died of the disease since the 1980s. Drugs exist to keep the worst effects of the disease at bay, but the new standard threatens to take a toll on patients before they realize they even need treatment. Well, and I'd like to share something that I found. Do you remember President Obama saying that Islam was part of the founding of America? Well, I found a piece written by WND's Bill Federer that I'd like to share with you. I think he put this very well. That the U.S. has been at war with Islam since Thomas Jefferson's time. Listen up, President Obama. The first nation to recognize my country was Morocco, stated President Obama in Cairo, Egypt on June 4th of 2009. Morocco began recognizing American colonists in 1625. As Governor William Bradford wrote in the fates of the pilgrim ships sent back to England carrying dried fish and 800 pounds of beaver skins to trade for supplies, they were well within the English Channel, almost inside of Plymouth, but there she was, unhappily taken by a Turkish man-of-war and carried off to Morocco, where the captain and crew were made slaves. Muslim pirates of Morocco raided European coasts and carried away over 1 million to North Africa slave markets, where also tens of millions of Africans were sold into slavery. In 1627, Algerian Muslim pirates led by Murat Reis the Younger raided Iceland and carried 400 into slavery. On June 20th, 1631, the entire village of Baltimore, Ireland, was captured by Muslim pirates. Thomas Osborne Davis wrote in his poem, The Sack of Baltimore, "The yell of Allah breaks above the shriek and roar. O blessed God, the Algerian is Lord of Baltimore." Kidnapped Englishman Francis Knight wrote, "I arrived in Algiers, the city fatal to all Christians and the butchery of mankind." Morocco's Sultan Moulay had 500 wives, mostly captured from Europe, forced 25,000 white slaves to build his enormous market. He was witnessed killing an African slave just to try out a new hatchet he was given. Thomas Jefferson wrote to John Day in 1787, "There is an order of priests called the Mathurians, the object of whose institution is to beg alms for the redemption of captives. They keep numbers always in Barbary, searching out the captives of their country, and redeem, I believe, on better terms than any other body, public or private. It occurred to me that their agency might be obtained for the redemption of our prisoners in Algiers." In 1786, Thomas Jefferson wrote to William Carmichael regarding Tripoli's demand for an extortion tribute payment. In 1786, Mr. Adams and I had conference with the Tripoli ambassador, named Abderrahman. He asked us 30,000 guineas for peace with his court. When Jefferson asked the Muslim ambassador what the new country of America had done to offend him, he reported to John Jay, on March 28, 1786, the ambassador answered us that it was written in their Quran that all nations should not have knowledge of Islam's authority were sinners, that it was their duty to make war upon them and to make them slaves of all they could take as prisoners. Consequently, Jefferson purchased a Quran to understand the enemy. Nearly 20% of the U.S. federal budget was used to make extortion tribute payments to the Muslim pirates, and they still continued their piracy. On December 29, 1803, the new 36-gun USS Philadelphia ran aground on Morocco's shallow coast. Muslim pirates captured and imprisoned Captain William Bainbridge and his 307-man crew for 18 months to prevent the ship from being used by the Muslim Barbary pirates. Lieutenant Stephen Dictator, on February 16, 1804, sailed his ship Intrepid into Tripoli's pirate harbor. Decatur set fire to the captured U.S. frigate Philadelphia and escaped amidst fierce enemy fire. British Admiral Horatio Nelson called it the most bold and daring act of the age. The Navy and Marines later captured Tripoli and forced the Pash to make peace on their terms. The anointed John Quincy Adams, in a bibliography, said our gallant Commodore Stephen Dictator had chastised the pirates of Algiers. The day they disdained to conceal his intentions, my power, he said, has been wrestled from my hand. Draw ye the treaty of your pleasure, and I will sign it, but beware of the moment, when I shall recover my power, for with that moment your treaty shall be waste paper. The First Barbary War, 1801 to 1805, America's first war after the Revolution, and the Second Barbary War of 1850. This is what gave rise to the Marine Corps anthem, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. This came from fighting Muslim aggression and piracy, Mr. Obama. And let me remind everyone again, End Time News now has a mobile app available on Google Play. You can now stay connected and never miss an episode of End Time News. Just go to Google Play and download the new mobile app today. It's for iPhone and Android, and it's free. That's my favorite part. It's free. Google Play, just search End Time News. Get that mobile app today. And you can email me at contact@WDeanShook. The homepage is WDeanShook. And as usual, when the dust settles and the smoke clears, I'll be back with more truth in the news. I'll see you then.
You can get these full stories and more at WDeanShook.com. That's WDeanShook.com.